one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, Mayor Price, I offer my sincere condolences to your lost loved one. Our Father in heaven, as we approach your throne tonight, we're so thankful that we can. Father, I do pray as we've come here tonight, Lord, to discuss the affairs of our city, Lord, you give our mayor and our council members that are here wisdom. Father, we do pray that you be with our police as they patrol right now. We ask that you build a hedge around them, get them home safely. We pray for our firemen that are out serving you as well. We ask, Lord, you protect them and get them home as well. Father, we do pray tonight. We have decisions to make and of the city, and Father, we just ask, we seek your face and your wisdom. And we thank you for this time that we can come together. Father, we ask that everything that is said and done tonight would be that to glorify thy name. For we do ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Roll call, please.
Creighton?
Here.
Raymond?
Here.
Vieira?
Here.
Vineyard?
Present.
Price?
Here.
We have a quorum. Mayor or city attorney report out from closed session.
Yeah, yes, we know. Ladies and gentlemen, there are no reportable items at this time. The staff was given direction.
There were no subsequent need items that were brought to us, and so we come to approval of agenda as posted or as amended.
Are there any items on the agenda wishing to be amended, added, deleted? Okay. Hearing none, entertain motion. Mr. Vineyard.
Motion to approve agenda as posted.
Second.
Call for the question.
Vineyard?
Yes.
Vieira?
Yes.
Creighton?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Motion passes. Ceremonial matters. Marines of the Central California Veterans present the U.S. Marines Combat Fighting Knife to the city of Atwater for their continued support of veterans and observance of the 242nd birthday of the United States Marine Corps.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gary Bryce. I'm associated with the VFW here in Atwater, California. Last year, we again had the birthday party for the United States Marine Corps, and I was proud to be a speaker. But I learned a lesson the hard way when I started off. I got up and introduced myself, Gary Bryce, retired Master Sergeant, United States Air Force. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I knew I said the wrong thing. But this is a great group of folks, and they've come here to give you a plaque to honor our city and our council members and just everyone else for being a home for veterans and appreciating veterans. So I don't remember everybody's name, but we have a speaker, and we'll get up and introduce themselves, then to make the presentation, Mr. Mayor. Gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Councilman. We wanted to come out here today and thank you for having us and having an opportunity for the Marine Corps to have a Marine Corps birthday in Atwater. It was very memorable. Thank you to Ray Villegas and Michael Keel and their family in the back. They cooked a meal. It was delicious. But besides that, the city of Atwater and its people has always been very supportive for our veterans. And of course, in our newly founded Marine Corps MCCV, Marine Corps Central California Valley Marine Group. And because of our work, the city of Atwater recognized the Marine Corps with a proclamation in 2016. Based on our mission statement, the MCCV and committee is formed of local Marines and independent of other organizations. Its main goal is to protect Marine Corps heritage and to provide a safe and clean environment for Marine Corps traditional events in our local area. The purpose is to organize a better foundation for serving our Marine brotherhoods and being an active veteran group within our community. We are open to assist all veterans by maintaining a consistently obtaining knowledge and the connections with our veteran groups, always striving to provide a positive influence to all veterans. We will continue to educate and commitment to all of Marine veterans and our community. We have a plaque to present to you, Mayor, of course. The plaque represents the Marine Corps K-bar. It's our survival knife. we use this knife as our last resource. When our weapon has no more ammo, this K-bar comes out and we attach it to our front of our M16A4. And of course, we go to battle with it, and we go gung-ho. Marine Corps goes gung-ho, and we go into to finish the fight. So with this K-bar, we want to present it to our mayor today. It's our survival knife. And of course, I have a very young Marine here with uniform to present the plaque to you, Mayor. Okay. The plaque is pretty much, if I don't, I'm going to borrow from you, sir. Sorry about that. Thank you, sir. So Marines, Central California presents a U.S. Marine Corps combat knife to the city of Atwater, California, in appreciation for the continued support of veterans and the MCCV Marine Corps birthday celebration, November 10th, 2017. Mayor, thank you very much for all the support. Thank you, staff, for providing all the great venues and all the opportunities you give us. And on behalf of the Marine MCCV, Sergeant, please present. If you don't mind, Mayor, just a couple photos with you, sir, if you don't mind.
You bet.
Yes, sir.
While everybody's gathering here, I want to just say that, you know, I've been to this celebration in the past, and, you know, presenting it to an Air Force retiree here, I'm I'm a bit humbled myself, but thank you so very much.
We want to invite you again to this year's Marine Corps birthday, and it'll be here in Atwater, and hopefully you're there, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Our next item is presentations, and on the agenda it shows that Supervisor McDaniel would be speaking. He's unable to attend tonight. And so we move to the report by Scott Malta, Castle Airport Manager, Use and Regulation of Drones.
Ladies and gentlemen, Council, I have asked Scott to make this presentation tonight. As you may recall, perhaps 2.5 years ago, Scott, we had a similar presentation by Mr. Malta. It's been brought to my attention, as it was back then, that the use of these, if you want to call them recreational drones, is becoming ever increasingly more popular. And I think people are regarding them more and more as a like a recreation, like a remote-controlled little car or something along those lines. And I think there's become a kind of an epidemic. Scott and I attended a trade show over in San Jose here a 1.5, 2 years ago, and one of the door prizes, as I recall, was a rather nice drone with a camera and the whole shooting match on there. And it's relatively easy to learn how to use these, how to fly them, and what have you. However, they come with a lot of regulations and a lot of rules, and it's important, I think, that the community understand what these rules and regulations are. We have a lot of aircraft that fly in the airspace over Atwater and Merced County in general, and there are some rules to that. And having one of these drones, especially during the season when we have our fire activity and we have some very large framed aircraft out here flying around Castle and over the fires, you may hear reports every so often where a drone has come into an area. They have to ground every single aircraft, and that puts lives and property in danger. And the same thing applies for here. Anybody that puts up a drone around there, they don't go well up a jet engine or into a wing or a windscreen. So it's extremely important that everybody understand the rules of the game. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Malta, who will give us a briefing on just what to expect.
Thank you, Mayor Price and City Council members. Appreciate the opportunity to be here, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry you have my back to you, but you can see the presentation on the screens. I've got quite a number of slides here. I will go kind of quickly and not dwell too long on any slide. Next one, please. So the quick question is, what are UAS? We typically refer to them as drones, but that actually stands for Unpiloted Aerial System. And so we're going to be talking about these things as I go through this presentation. Next. So again, what are they? One of the key points to take away from this particular slide is the second sentence. An unmanned aircraft is a component of a UAS. It is defined by statute as an aircraft that is operated without the possibility of direct human intervention from within or on the aircraft. Next. So interestingly enough, according to the FAA rules now, a drone, if you will, is considered exactly the same as a manned aircraft, with the exception that we don't have a pilot in the airplane. So the rules have become very stringent in some cases. Next, please. But there are also a lot of benefits to the UAS. Next. Next. Keep going. One more. All right. So one of the things we see people using UAS for are building inspections and aircraft inspections. Locally, what we would find people using them for classically are realtors wanting to take pictures of homes and or properties they wish to sell. We'll come to that here in a little while. We also, next, and one more. We also have the ability to do a lot of ground surveying and 3D mapping with the GIS that are part of the UAS system. So imagine our area as full of agriculture as it is. We have a lot of people wanting to use these systems to do things like seeing how well hydrated their crops are, or whether there are bugs out there, or whether there's a kill going on based on a bacteria. All of that can be done with a UAS system, basically keyed in by a computer and flown on its own. So these are some of the things that are the positive benefits. Next one. Also, on the positive side of incidents, we have incident command and control, where some fire departments, and by the way, the local Merced County Sheriff Department, are actually using UAS in their business. So they can get a bird's eye view of a fire or other kind of circumstances. In addition, we see UAS now being used in rescue type operations. This one is configured to carry a life raft. Next. Now this is an interesting picture, and I'm going to use a laser pointer here in case you can't see it. But imagine this person and his son are out on this rock in this raging water. Classically, we would do everything we could to rescue these people, to include sending firefighters bravely into the water to rescue them. That's a UAS system. Oh, it's not going to show up with the laser. If you look toward the top of the picture, you see a white blur above the guy's hands. Below that white blur is a black cable, if you will. And if you can see it all the way off to the right, there's actually a cable that this UAS has flown out to this person. He will quickly untie it and then pull in a larger rope, which they will help get him out. That's another positive operation that can be used. Next one, please. In addition, this is being developed as we speak, where somebody, someplace, could press a button saying someone's having a heart attack, and a drone will literally fly to them with the ability for just a layman to go ahead and use this AED device. That's happening now as we speak. Next. However, we do have some incidents that occur with drones. Here's, believe it or not, a model airplane that's crashed into a car. Next one. This is probably the most critical situation we have with these things. The batteries, if you can imagine, would be just about that size, okay? But that size right there, if it's punctured, will burn at 5,000 degrees. This is one of the problems we have with these type of equipment. Next one. Also, there are people who irresponsibly use them in and around large crowds, and people have been hit by these things. This person, I don't know whether this is a staged photo or if it's a photo that actually shows the after effect, but people can be injured from it. Next. And also we're having, as Mayor Price mentioned, incidents with manned aircraft. Next one, please. This situation, that's a Black Hawk helicopter from upstate New York. Next. It was actually hit by a drone. This is one of the first actual aircraft collisions we've had. This is the horizontal stabilizer at the back end of the aircraft. You can see damage almost right in the center of the picture. Next one. This is a little more difficult to see, But on that door, just above the hinge, there's a dent. But here's the interesting part of this incident. Next one. So that's the motor that was found actually embedded in the aircraft. You see it in the evidence bag there. The quadcopter carried 4 of these rotors. One of them was embedded in the aircraft, and interestingly enough, by using the serial number on the motor, the military and then the FAA were able to find out who the operator of the UAS was, and he has gotten into some trouble. Interestingly enough, when asked about where he was flying, he said, "Yeah, I know there's some rules out there, but I don't care really. I'm just out there having a good time." This was his good time. Those are the people I refer to as rogues. Next. Okay, next one. So just keeps going through. So these are some of the things, and go ahead and hold right there. These are some of the effects of a person flying illegally with a drone. First of all, there's going to be an FAA investigation. There can be fines. There can be, as Mayor Price was mentioning, interference with emergency operations, and you'll notice the fine for that is $32,140 per occurrence. Interestingly enough, the fires down in Southern California that we had here back in December, there were some drone operators flying irresponsibly. A friend of mine who operates the Ventura County Airport system had a beta device that was being tested at his airport on how to find operators of drones that are flying illegally. They actually used that device and found 2 different operators who then subsequently got in trouble who were flying where they should not have been flying. Also, this is one of the first big fines we saw. A company called Skypan, who was flying illegally in New York City, was initially fined $1.9 million, reduced to $200,000. TFR violations can also hold a very substantial fine, $100,000. Now, what is a TFR? Anybody remember when President Obama showed up here at Castle a couple years ago? While he was on the ground and his aircraft was moving, we had a TFR around Castle, meaning it's a terminal flight restriction. Anybody who flies a drone within an area like that can be hit with a $100,000 fine and lose their certificate. Go ahead, please. One more. Also, there can be lawsuits caused by individual people. Next one. And one more. Go ahead. So, and one more. Now, this is really hard to read from where you're sitting, but basically there was an individual in Chicago who was flying a drone at the 42nd or 52nd floor, taking pictures inside of somebody's window. And he did this for quite some time. Well, when he came in to land the aircraft, which by the way was on the 3rd floor of this skyrise, he was apprehended by the police officers and was subsequently arrested, and there's some fines and other things he had happen to him. Next one. Here's another one where a drone pilot gets slapped with 30 days in jail after losing control of his craft and knocking a woman out cold. They're not very big, but they can actually do a little damage. Go ahead. So the question is, what are these drones? One more? Okay, so here's some typical pictures of drones. The one in the lower right-hand corner is the classic one we see these days. That's called a DJI Phenom. And basically from tip to tip, it's about that big. The one on the left is a hybrid, meaning it flies like an airplane, but it takes off like a helicopter. The other ones are not quite so classically referred to as drones, but they can be. This is like what I personally fly. We'll go to the next slide, and you'll see the lower right-hand corner. Those are model airplanes, but according to today's definition, they are referred to as small UAS, just like the quadcopter up above there. So the small UAS is an aircraft under 55 pounds. By the way, one would think 55 pounds, that's a huge, heavy aircraft. Some of the large airplanes that come to Castle in the Memorial Day weekend event we have weigh in just under 55 pounds, so just to give you an idea. This is referred to as hobbyists and commercial operations. We'll talk a little bit about those directly. They can be guided by GPS. They have multi-rotors or first pilot view systems installed, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a sec. They can be used for aerial photography, survey, or other things. The more complex that we make these, the more expensive they are. And of course, there's a significantly higher risk to running into an aircraft. Next one. This is what a first pilot view looks like. If you see somebody standing by themselves looking like that, they're breaking the rules. This is a friend of mine in Georgia. He is actually looking through a camera on his US just as if he was sitting in the airplane itself. The rules say, number one, he has to have a qualified observer next to him, who, by the way, can take his transmitter from his hands and actually fly the thing if it gets into trouble, and it has to remain within visual sight, meaning he can't stand in the middle of the city of Atwater and fly it out over Castle, by the way. Next. But these are large UASs. We don't talk too much about those. These are flown by the military and other law enforcement type operations. And just to give you a scale, if you will, the one on the bottom is called a Global Hawk. And that aircraft, if we set it next to a 737 commercial airliner, would be just about the same size, to give an example of that. Next one, please. So the type of operators we see are recreational people. That's what I am personally. There's no permit or certification required to fly as a regular hobbyist. However, the FAA has required that we are to go onto a website with the FAA, actually register ourselves, and then put our FAA registration numbers on the aircraft, so if it gets away from me, people can figure out who it came from. But we're also governed by public law, and you'll notice there's some qualifiers there. For example, we have to fly under community-based standards. The AMA safety code is one of those standards. Generally no higher than 400 feet above the ground, no closer than 5 miles to an airport. Also, if we're flying within 5 miles of an airport, we're required to notify the airport. In the case of Castle, it would be to the control tower. And then no flights over people or careless operations, also staying within visual line of sight. And can only be done for recreational purposes only, meaning I cannot take my model airplane, put a camera on it, go take pictures of something, and then sell those pictures. As soon as I sell something, I have become, next one more, I have become a commercial operator. In essence, any aircraft that is used for any reason other than a hobby, and again, me taking pictures of my friend the realtor's properties and providing them to that realtor is still considered a commercial operation, even though he may not pass me money. They're being used in a commercial business. And that's one of the big changes that we've had in the law. So if there's any reason other than recreation, furtherance of an entity, revenue generation, they must follow what are known as the Part 107 rules. Keep going, please. Another one? Okay. These are the folks that are required to operate under Part 107. And this requires an actual certificate from the FAA. And I won't read you all the bottom stuff down there, but you'll understand that government people who are operating UAS, that would be the sheriff, for example, a fire department, the city of Atwater, should you choose to one day do one, you would have to have somebody go through the process of getting their commercial certificate to fly these things. Next one. We also have universities operating UAS. Go ahead. One more. And like out at Castle, we actually have the UC Merced, who has a drone lab out there, and they're actually flying drones, if you'll allow me to use that term again, for testing and training and other kind of evaluation purposes. All of what that says right there is that the student, for example, who may be flying it does not need to be a commercially registered pilot, but there has to be an instructor there who is. Next one, please. These are what the certificates look like. On our right, as you're looking at it, is a standard pilot certificate. On the left is the UAS certificate, and you'll see it says UAS along the right-hand side. By the way, any law enforcement officer who comes upon a person flying a UAS has the right to ask to see this thing, or to see the registration number that we all are supposed to have now. Next one, please. So I'll go very quickly through this part. This question is, how do I get my remote pilot certificate? And it's all listed on the FAA website. Next. Go ahead, 16 years old, pass a 60-question multiple choice test. And by the way, the Sierra Academy of Aeronautics at Castle is an authorized testing center, so it could be done locally. They have to take a similar private pilot examination, and there's actually a cost, $150 to take the test. One more. There's preparation for the test, and then the self-study program people can use. There's also commercial classes people can go through. Next. And one more. Okay. These are the areas that a person who is going to get their certificate would go through. There's 5 different areas: regulations, airspace, weather, loading and performance and operations. Now here, I'll speed up and go through these very quickly. Go ahead. Regulations next. Now, before we move on, let me just bring these to bear here. There's a few things that are very important for us to all be aware of. First of all, once again, they have to be within a line of sight, meaning the pilot can actually see the aircraft and can control it. It cannot be behind a building 2 miles away, 1,500 feet in the air. They have to be able to see it and operate it. And that's what you'll see with the next part there. Oops, back up one, there we go, good. Has to be flown in daylight, unless they have a special certificate for lighting operations and the aircraft is configured for that. They can't go higher than 400 AGL, meaning feet above the ground. The weather has to be at least 3 miles. It can't be flown in fog, if you will. And the distance from the clouds, this is kind of like the same thing a VFR or visual flight rules pilot would have to fly in to fly a commercial UAS. Next, please. There can be things that come up and emergency situations happen. If something like that occurs, the pilot is required then, by the way, the person flying a UAS is not referred to by the FAA as a pilot, but an operator. The operator must report to the FAA that they had a problem if one of these requirements occurs. Next one, please. And these are a whole bunch of qualifiers as to what requires a report to the FAA, to include people being injured or damage to properties. Next. The FAA also has the right to come and inspect the aircraft. Every time a commercial pilot flies an aircraft, they are ensuring that the aircraft is registered, they're ensuring that they've checked and made sure all the parts work, and they've got all the appropriate waivers that they have and their certificates, and the FAA can check and ask for all of that. Next one. Go ahead. This is the airspace that these aircraft fly, and I brought this in to show you a couple things. First of all, if you look on the far left-hand side of the picture, you see that little purple thing there. It's called Class Delta airspace. That's what we have around Castle. So for anyone to fly around Castle, within 4 miles of Castle, or as the rule says, 5 miles, they have to get permission from the control tower. Outside of that area, or if you will, out over the western edge of Atwater, they can just fly. They do not have to talk to anybody. At the Merced Airport, this is a kind of a little different situation. On a normal day, they can fly anywhere near that as long as they've reported it to the airport manager. On a bad weather day, they have to talk to the FAA because it's controlled airspace outside of our area. Next one, please. This is just some information that these UAS operators have to learn. Next. There's these things known as notices, notice to airmen, and an operator needs to understand how to work that system to know if there's any restrictions, such as, is there a TFR or the president somewhere nearby? Go ahead. Next one. Weather is important for UAS operators because they need to understand what's going on around them. And the next slide, very busy slide here, but basically understand it this way. The lower the aircraft is, the more dense the air is, the higher it is, the less dense it is. Therefore, these aircraft operate better lower than they do higher. As the weather changes and that density altitude changes, that can affect the operation of these aircraft. Next one, please. Loading and performance. Remember we talked about they can't fly more than 100 miles an hour. This is ways of detecting and understanding. By the way, the transmitters of these aircraft will tell the operator how fast the aircraft is going. Next one. Loading is kind of the same thing. We don't want to overload them so that they don't perform well. Next. One more. There's all kinds of different communications that are required for these people to understand when they operate them, specifically, again, talking with the tower and so on and so forth. Next. And this is a slide that describes to the people how they would talk to the control tower. And again, that's a requirement if they're flying within a towered airspace. Next. There's also discussions of what it looks like on an airfield. We have markings like that at Castle. That's okay, keep going. Just keep going and stop right there. For someone who wants to set up a UAS program, and we're coming close to the end of this, these are some of the criteria and things that one would consider. So for example, if the city of Atwater wanted to do something where they were surveying Atwater, you would go through these kinds of decisions to determine how you would set it up, who would be flying it, what kind of operation you're going to do, which would also then generate decisions on what kind of aircraft. Next slide. So for example, once again, the one on the left is a little quadcopter that can lift off right from the ground, go straight up, hover to where you want to take pictures along the side of buildings and other kinds of things. Whereas if you were going to be doing something out in a field that you wanted to have an aircraft aloft for a very long time and flying autonomously, you would use something with wings on it where it would be very efficient and relatively slow and doing its mission. So these are the kind of criteria people look at. Next one. They also need to be registered with the FAA if they're over a half a pound. Next. Liability is a very important thing to consider. Next. Now this is a slide, and I'm going to show you a second one here in a moment, but this is basically screenshots of programs that people can download to know whether they're in an area where they can simply fly the UAS or if they've got to talk to somebody. Go to the next slide. Now, this may be a little difficult to see. These were taken basically as photographs off of this cell phone a few minutes ago in my office. So the picture on the right-hand side is a close-up of Castle, and you can see Highway 99, you can see Atwater. So anybody flying a UAS around Atwater would have to talk to the control tower to get permission to fly around Atwater. You'll see the picture on the left-hand side shows the Merced Airport area, the Castle area where they overlap, and the Belico Airport or the Turlock Airport. So for someone who's flying legally, they have to have, if they're flying in Atwater now, mind you, they have to have reached out to the control tower. Now the tower can tell them, for example, there's a little park off of Juniper where I've seen a couple of guys flying drones and small model aircraft. If they're doing that recreationally, they should have reached out to the tower. Tower would tell them, as long as you stay below 400 feet, you're good, don't bother me again. But they might say, for example, if you're over the city hall, we want you to tell us every time you go up in the air. That's a possibility. But this kind of a program will let people know whether they need to contact the tower or not. Next one, please. Go to the next one. Next one, we'll just kind of go through these. And what these are telling us is essentially what I've just explained, with the exception that for commercial operators, according to this page right here, once again, they have to get permission from both the tower and, interestingly enough, they have to ask for an airspace waiver. Right now, it's 90 days in advance. It can be cut down through this new program down to maybe 2 to 3 days, or excuse me, 2 to 3 hours. But a realtor can't just go out and start taking pictures, even though they may have the proper authorization without going through these. They can be held liable by the FAA. That's a real strong takeaway. So, as we finish this up, there are several benefits for using UAS. Go ahead. There are outstanding tools for research. There's safe and legal routes to getting certificates. People must be aware of all of the rules to be able to fly these things. It's incredibly important that they give way to manned aircraft. And that goes back to the whole idea, as Mayor Price was mentioning a little while ago, people flying UASs over fires, forest fires, will actually shut down the entire air attack until they can find whoever's operating it or take it out from the sky. Next. One more. So with all of that being said, let me just kind of just sum up just a couple of other real quick things. The UAS industry is going gangbusters. These things are literally everywhere. They're able to be bought as easily at Walmart and Best Buy. In fact, I had a couple of guys, this is an interesting one. I found out at Castle one day trying to launch a UAS. One guy's holding a transmitter, the other guy's reading the manual, if you will, and it wouldn't turn on. And I walked up and said, it'll not turn on, number one, because you're within 5 miles of this airport, and they've already coded it so it won't turn on if you're there, believe it or not. But the number two part was the guys had no idea they could not be flying at the airport. People are just not following the rules, or not understanding, they're not paying attention to what they find in the boxes that say, hey, go to these websites, learn some information, or go to a club and learn. The UAS can be an incredible, incredible positive tool for all kinds of things that we are just beginning to learn. At the same time, if they're flown irresponsibly, they can cause significant damage. And local municipalities like yours are having to make some decisions. You know, we have all of the rules from the FAA, and those are very broad and brushstroke. What they don't tell you is, what do you do when a person calls the police and says, there's a U.S. flying over my backyard while we're out at the pool? The question is, what do you do? That is where the local municipalities have begun passing various kinds of legislation to control those kinds of things. The caution I would give, should that become of interest to the city of Atwater, one thing to consider is, let's not paint a broad brushstroke that just stops everything from happening, but let's think it through so that we protect our public, but at the same time enable ourselves to do what we need to do with these type of piece of equipment. Are there any questions I might answer?
Any questions for Mr. Malta from the council? Any from the audience? Well, I'm sure there'll be a test on this, so I'm sure everybody.
I would say if there are questions in the future,
yeah,
I can be reached at Castle. That is where I work, and I'm more than happy to answer or coach or help anybody else out.
Okay.
Mayor Price, thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. Very informative. Next item, please.
Comments from the public. At this time, any person may comment on any item which is not on the agenda. Please state your name and address for the record. Action will not be taken on an item that is not on the agenda. If it requires action, it will be referred to staff and/or placed on a future agenda. To comment on an item that is on the agenda, please wait until the item is read for consideration. Please limit comments to a maximum of 5 minutes.
And I see Gloria's already hogged the mic up there already, and she's got.
Love Atwater's here. Love is in the air. I know Valentine's is Wednesday, but this is not until April. I'm sorry. I'm Gloria Perez. I am here to let everybody know, if they never been to a Love Atwater event, they're missing out. Also, too, is I want to just thank the council, thank the mayor, that, you know, of your support. And, you know, I desperately need it now more so than ever. I have a few people calling me about projects. Now, if you don't know what Love Atwater is, go to loveatwater.com. And basically, we do it twice a year. Last time we had Love Our Downtown, which was really nice. The mayor showed up and talked, and we had a lot of businesses participating. It was really, really neat. That's our first year doing it. Hope to do it again. But basically what it is, it's twice a year. It's hard when you're trying to talk to them and then talk to you guys at the same time, because I'm trying to go like that. So it's twice a year. We do it in April 28th. The rally starts at Ralston Park. We get projects from the community. We get projects from the council. We get projects, you know, that that want to make a difference in our town. I've been doing or coordinating it with all the volunteers for 10 years. It's their 10th year doing this. And it's phenomenal. I mean, the people and the willingness of people just want to volunteer and want to make a difference in their town. There's a few areas that's a little bit, you know, harder, you know, and to reach, but they are reachable. You know, I, matter of fact, just got a call from Bellevue Elementary, and they want to put a project together. Thanks for Mr. Vineyard. He actually gave her my number, which is Cheryl and Tiffany. She's actually the principal there. So they're fired up. They're eager. They want to do something in that area. Which is down Bellevue, so that's a project there. And a lot of these students, which is awesome, is that we get so many, I mean, we get people wanting to volunteer to do different things, from this age to people in wheelchairs, to people in what are those things? What are those cars? Walkers, there you go. So, one of those walkers. So there's a lot of people that go out there. So Love Atwater, again, it's going to be on April the 28th, Saturday, Ralston Park. I got 2 minutes. Oh my gosh, I'm talking too fast. Okay. Question for the council is that I know that in the past you guys have supported me, but I was just wondering if you guys can put all your heads together and stuff and try to figure out a project. I want a project that is going to be coming from our leaders. I want it to be like, hey, you know what? Let's all pull together and let's brainstorm of a project. What do you think? Because I need projects. I can get volunteers. I can get 400, 500 volunteers. And the cool thing about it, it doesn't cost the city anything. Their willingness to want to go out there and make a difference is phenomenal. We get BUHAC students, we get Atwater students, we get churches. We get like 15, 16 churches just pulling together and want to do something. So I need projects. So go to loveatwater.com or go to, I can actually, my business cards or whatever, or somebody can get a hold of me. Everybody knows me. Hi, Lynn. So anyways, let's get fired up. This is our city. Let's make a difference in our city. We can do that. We've been doing it for a long time. So April 28th, Love Atwater, Ralston Park, 8 o'clock. We'll have Starbucks coffee. We'll have donuts. And I'm actually working on the prisoners too. Every April they come out and they help out. And they do a lot of work. They do a lot of work. So thank you so much for your support, continued support. Any questions?
Any questions for Gloria?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask you when did it start, but typically when does it start and when does it end?
Okay, 8 o'clock is the rally, and basically what we do is we get people all fired up, wanting to go, then we get the leaders to, in their projects, so they go out there to the projects, and when they go out to the projects, they go out there about 9 o'clock. It starts from 9, the project's going over there and loving on the city from 9 to noon. Usually in April, because we do it twice a year, usually in April we have a lunch for our volunteers and we get donations and so forth. Actually, we just got a big donation from Walmart. They sent me a donation of $300-something, which was phenomenal, which is awesome.
Okay. And I want to also thank you for working with Bellevue School and that group there. I do want to be a part of that. So let's just get together.
We're on the record, right? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? And you got to forgive me, I got to leave because I got my grandbabies at the house. Okay?
Thank you, Gloria.
God bless.
Anyone else wishing to address the council?
Good evening. My name is Jerry Moore. I've been retired from this city for 15 years, and it's the first time I've ever been back to ask a question. And my question is in regards to Measure V. Measure V, for those who don't know, was a collaboration between the county and the cities within the county in regards to a tax that was supposed to be taken, and that money was supposed to be used for our infrastructure roadways. Well, I don't know how long it's been since that money has been being collected, but the only people I see that's getting anything or any use for new roads or anything is the county itself. 140 is brand new all the way from Merced to Gustine. Belcher Road has just been brand new put in, and there's around the county there's several other roads. And my question is, when, if you haven't ridden down Winton Way between Bellevue and Atwater Boulevard sometime, it's an experience in itself just to see which of the shallowest holes you can find to get down it without jarring your teeth out or losing the undercarriage of your car. And that road is not the only one in the city of Atwater that's in dire need of something. And the longer, and you guys know this more than anybody, the longer you put something off, the more it's going to cost at a later time. My question is, when do we in Atwater get some of that money to do something about our city streets?
I'll answer that for you, Jerry.
Okay.
We have currently right now near to $500,000 in Measure V money that has come in. The area that you're talking about on Winton Way, actually we engineered from Juniper all the way up to Olive. And that one section right there, taking care of all those concerns you're addressing, that project right there will be a $3.8 million project right now in today's dollars. We also took a look at Fruitland, on both sides of Winton Way, down by the high school, and also the other direction going out towards Schaefer. That one there is $4.2, $4.3 million project right there. The one on Fruitland presents a lot of different issues because it widens, it narrows, it has curb and gutter on one side, it hasn't on the other. It's a lot of issues there, plus drainage issues. To go directly to the Measure V portion of that, like I say, Atwater, their proportion, well, everybody is portioned out according to your population of the city, what have you. And our money that we have collected thus far, like I say, is close to $500,000. Doesn't go very far. SB1 is money that we're also supposed to be collecting here fairly soon. With that source of revenue and Measure V money together, hopefully there's going to be some money in there so that we can start like on Winton Way. I agree with you wholeheartedly. That was one of the projects when 2.5, 3 years ago, I got together with Mr. McBride when he was here, and that was one of the first things I asked about was that right there, plus the overpass over by Applegate, all of that, and it doesn't come cheap, and I know that people are concerned about that. There's a lot of things that we need to do, and $20 million would just be scratching the surface at this point right now. When we'll start those projects, I don't have a good answer for you, but I know that the engineering reports are done on Fruitland and for Winton Way, and when we start collecting enough revenue to do those projects, they will be done. One of the things that I tried to do, or I asked if we could do, and Albert's in the audience tonight, and he educated me on this, was I would have liked to seen us maybe be able to bond those projects and then use the revenue that comes in from the Measure V to support the bonds. Unfortunately, our general fund is not healthy enough in order to go ahead and do that, so we're just going to have to kind of knuckle down and bear what we can with revenues that we can collect.
When is the state supposed to start maybe giving you some of the money?
That is a very good question. Anybody have an answer? Do you have an answer to that, Art? I'm not quite sure when we're supposed to do that. LaQuinda, do you know?
It started in November.
Started in November. Do you know how much revenue we've collected on that?
We already received one payment last week. It was only $5,000, but going forward, it should be more than that.
Right. Okay.
Thank
So I know a long answer to a short question, but thank you, Jerry, for your concern.
you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else wishing to address the council?
Buenas tardes a todos. Sorry for a little English.
Okay.
My name is Nereida Jans, and I will be translating for the pastor.
Mi nombre es Isidro Delgado
His name is Isidro Delgado,
y represento a la Iglesia Hispana de Jesucristo aquí en la ciudad de Atwater.
and he represents the church for the Hispanics here in Atwater for Ministros Llamada Final.
Gracias por todo el trabajo que están haciendo por esta ciudad.
Thank you all for all the hard work that you're putting into the city.
Y estamos nosotros como hispanos dispuestos a apoyarlos a ustedes en el trabajo que están haciendo.
And as Hispanics, we are here to help each and every one of you with the work that you are putting ahead of us.
Dice la Escritura que nosotros debemos orar por las autoridades que nos gobiernan, y para nosotros es un privilegio hacerlo, de orar por ustedes.
There's a scripture that we should always pray for the government, like you guys are up there.
Y hoy, en representación de la Iglesia Hispana, deseo hacerle un presente al manager.
And as far as he'd like to give this nice award to the new city manager,
Y darle la bienvenida a esta ciudad para apoyarlos a ustedes en lo que están haciendo.
and to welcome you here at our city. Thank you for your hard work.
Solo que le voy a pedir una silla para estar a su tamaño.
He just needs a chair so he can climb up and be at your level.
Gracias por la oportunidad que nos dan de estar aquí.
Thank you for the opportunity to have us here today.
Thank you. Well, first time I've had a positive acknowledgement.
Que la primera vez que le dan un reconocimiento positivo a él. Que gracias.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else wishing to address the council at this time?
Danny Hernandez, 1904 Canal Drive in Atwater. Last meeting that I was here, we had a gentleman that came up here, praised that he had had a conversation with the new city manager having to do with whatever it had to do. He was very happy, and he just kind of went from there. That same night, apparently, our chief of police was dismissed. Unknown to anybody here, it was not announced. It was done before this meeting occurred, because I was here, and nobody in the city council said anything about it. The next day in the Sun Star, you know, we get a tab that the chief of police had been dismissed by this manager. What happens next is I called the PD here, and they said he had a personal dispute for the dismissal. Moving up to February the 3rd, the Atwater Signal comes out and indicates that there had been a meeting on the 22nd, you know, that had to do with this, the chief being advised that the police association had been advised about this dismissal, or they had voted to dismiss him, right? Which in turn is a lie. Because he dismissed him on the 22nd, the newspaper got it in time to print it, and nobody in Atwater knew about it. So I think you're starting off here. There was a lot of commotion in this city hall, in this council, regarding this gentleman in front of us here, Mr. DeWort, into his honesty and whatever else was going on over there in Ceres. Now, having said that, Casey Steen came out on Saturday's program and indicated that the beef had to do with 5 sergeants that were promoted without any pay while the ex-chief was still here, Petro, if I'm not mistaken, when he worked as the manager and the city council and the chief of police. He talked to the interim that was here in the air. Now, how can you go and replace an officer of this city with a PD that has done a hell of a job in communicating a lot of the issues that were going on with this city, having to deal with the lack of funds at the time that he took over, and expect now we're going to have to look for another chief, and at the same time keep this individual that lied to this city? Now, I don't find nothing good about that at all. All we're going to get from that is more lying. There's one thing I don't like, is people that lie. And you're starting out the wrong way. Cindy took a lot of hits over this gentleman here and defended him. And I was with her up until that point. I says, you know what? Whatever happened over there in Ceres, now you got, you know, happened in Ceres. Now you got another investigation, spending more money to find out what he did over there. And this is a whole lot of baloney, if I can say it that way without saying anything more rude. I think you ought to make a motion tonight. I'm requesting it. You make a motion tonight in public to remove him, period. I don't want to see another city manager that's also a police chief. If that's the reason, I don't think that works. I don't think we need to have a person that is going to lie to you again in this city. We got enough problems trying to clear up what the hell has already happened in the past. Everybody in this city is looking forward to getting something positive out of this council. And in the last month, we've had 2 different instances up here on the city that have occurred that put a black eye on this town. Let's get it straight. I move that you people have to remove this man, period. You cannot function with a person that will lie to you, plain and simple.
Anyone else wishing to address the council at this time?
Mayor, excuse me, Mayor. Here I am.
I'm sorry, there you are.
I just wanted to announce that the CDRC, the Community Development Resources Commission, has an unscheduled vacancy on our commission, and our commission is consists of the Planning Commission, Traffic Commission, and Parks and Recreation Commission. This vacancy, I'm encouraging the public, we need another commissioner. The applications are online and can be submitted to the city clerk's office by Thursday, March 1st. And if you have a question, you can contact the city clerk's office.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Larry?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Larry Lee, I think most of you know me. My daughter, who works with a dear, dear friend of mine, Joan Fall, they're involved with the Neighborhood Watch program. And my daughter called me either the 23rd or the 24th of last month, and she told me that the people had already heard about Sammy, and she said that they were hurt, upset, and surprised. I agree with what they said. I was not surprised at what happened. I also have been reading the newspapers. I've been reading about a friend of mine, Larry Morris, Vern Warnicke, the chief of police of Livingston, and their comments about what has happened to Sammy. I'm surprised more people haven't got up here and said something about Sammy. What they said, some of it I agreed with. What they said I agreed with, some is still a mystery. But I want to go back to when I first started working with the city of Atwater, 2001. When I came aboard, the first chief of police I was honored to work with, he just left. Jerry Moore. Well, let me tell you what Jerry Moore had and the next 4 chiefs that Sammy didn't have. They had support. Jerry Moore had Richard Hawthorne. Richard Hawthorne had Frank Petro. Frank Petro had Sammy. But under each one of them, one of those served as a assistant chief, and I don't remember ever having a lieutenant until we finally got Sammy. And I worked with all of them, worked probably 25 or 30 sections, different projects in this city. And Mayor Jim, I want to thank you. I was going to say this to begin with, but thank you for helping us with the Marine Corps birthday and other things I think I got you involved with. And thank you again. Things are not going too well. I can see the handwriting on the wall now. Something that Sammy never had, that Chief Moore had, like I said, the difference down the road. They all had assistant chiefs. They had lieutenants. And they had some good sergeants. Maybe some of you might remember, let's see, it was one under, I'm trying to think of what his name was. He's not with us no more, but he was a real good sergeant. Crothers was his name. I think probably a couple of my buddies back there remember him. Randy Crothers. He was the first man that gave me my assignment as a chaplain in 2001, and I'll never forget the comment he made to me about when you get in the car, Larry, don't use the sirens, and I did not. They all, like I said, they all had people behind, they all had people helped them, went up through the ranks, chief, assistant chief, to chief, and on down. We get down to Sammy. Sammy had nobody. He had no assistant chief. He had nobody helping him. He was on the. He was working all by himself.
Larry, if you will, please address your remarks to the council.
Well, I'm hoping they can hear me. I hope they can hear me. Hope you can hear me. Can you hear me? Oh, well then, great. I cut this out of the paper, Mayor. It's really amazing to me that a man can be on the job 8 days, working days, and fire the chief. It's mind-boggling to me. But here's what he did. I want to compare some notes. 2013, I cut this out of the paper. Homicides to 2013, 2. 2017, 0. Rapes, 9 in 2013, 7 in 17. Assaults, 313 in 2013, 270 in 2017. Burglary, 362, 2013, 185, 2017. Thefts, 804, 2013, 651 in 17. Vehicle thefts, 193, 144. In December, Sammy got an outstanding report.
Larry, your 5 minutes are up. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else wishing to address the council at this time?
Hello, everybody. My name is Albert Norfleet.
Don't be shy. Go ahead and speak right up. Everybody will hear it.
All right. It's no secret that Atwater is not doing well financially. And all my research shows that the city owes everyone from the internal water fund it borrowed from to retired city employees who deserve their pensions. Obviously, this needs to be fixed. Now, my solution is that you allow a marijuana dispensary to operate within city limits. I know that isn't something you're particularly fond of, but the truth is the cannabis business is booming and will continue to grow. The average one makes about $500,000 a year. The problem is that most people who own a dispensary don't give back to their community. Well, not the company I work for. We focus on helping the community around it and implementing the 10% rule. Now, the 10% rule is where 10% of our annual earnings will go to the city's general fund. Now, I believe every dispensary that opens in your town should agree to this because not only will it help the city obtain a better financial standing, but eventually it will help stabilize the overall economy of the town. With it, the city can fix up roads, build and have more programs in their community center, fund the pension of the retired city employees, pay off some old debts, decrease the debt and of the general fund, and just the list goes on and on. Also, this permit rule will make people seriously reconsider opening a dispensary in Atwater because most of the people are in the cannabis industry are in it for the money. Well, my company, Global Greens, will always put the community first. I know there's concern with security, and I come from a military family. Father was a 14-year Marine. Well, I propose that you hire veterans to protect your storefronts. This will kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The men and women who protect our country don't always have the best opportunities when coming back from deployment. My father, like I say, he was a Marine for 14 years. When he returned home, it found it hard to adjust and find a job that required his particular skill set. This is why Global Greens believes that We should take care of our veterans by providing them with jobs as soon as they return home. These brave men and women already know how to handle themselves when protecting our country, so a storefront will be a cakewalk to them. I know location is another concern. I know that Bellevue Road is basically off limits, being that it's a main road. And I understand and completely agree with this. In addition, there's so many abandoned places in Atwater, unfortunately, but that Global Greens can occupy and set up shop there. Overall, I don't do this for money or any sort of praise. I do it for the people, especially people who fall in hard times. I believe that everyone needs friends and family, and right now, the city needs some help. So when people ask me why I do what I do, I say because in hard times, everybody needs a bud. Any questions?
I would ask you to repeat your full name again, please, in the microphone so we can pick it up on the recording.
Albert Norfleet III.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Albert.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the council at this time? Jeannie?
Jeannie Knight, you need my address? I personally like Sammy Joseph. I've never had a problem with him, but I don't know him very well, just from here. And I don't know any police officers. But when you get a vote of no confidence from those officers, something's wrong somewhere. So the question that whatever his name is back there asked, he should be asking the police officers, why did they have the vote of no confidence? You know, that was not necessarily up to Art to work, it was up to those people, those officers, and evidently they wanted him out. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Going once? No, sir. We've already gone through that. Yes, Linda.
I have something, but it has to do with the consent calendar.
Oh, we'll get to that. Anyone else? Next agenda item. Yes. I'm sorry.
Mayor, Councilman, City Manager, I'm here before you as the IPOA President. Name's Dave Sargentson, for those who aren't aware. As you know, there's been some media coverage regarding Chief of Police Sammy Joseph being placed on administrative leave, and the Atwater Police Officers Association is releasing the following statement. And before I go into that, this has been released to the media, it has not been covered, so that's why I'm here. The Atwater Police Officers Association met and discussed concerns regarding the Chief of Police, Sammy Joseph, and his lack of leadership, as well as a feeling of overall distrust that he fosters in the organization. The meeting was well attended by approximately 2/3 of our members, and a vote of no confidence commenced with the overwhelming majority of those present voting in support of a vote of no confidence. With that said, the APOA also wanted the release that we were in full support of interim city manager to work and the direction that the city council was going. I've heard quickly about stats and how it's important. I don't know how many of you guys watch TV or if you follow the prophet, but Marcus Lemonis says, believe in the people, the process, and the product. And that product is from your patrolman working the streets, not from an office. And so, with that said, please believe in what the officers are trying to do. This isn't some conspiracy. This is something that was coming. Members were advised of things that were going on. And so, yeah, they may have been addressed in some documents because we were trying to head this off before it became an issue. So, with that said, I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else? Next agenda item.
Our consent calendar. Background information has been provided on all matters listed under the consent calendar. These items are considered to be routine. All items under the consent calendar are normally approved by one motion. All items under the consent if discussion is requested on any item, that item will be removed from the consent calendar for separate action And we are pulling item number 10 off of the consent calendar.
Well, are there any items that any member of the council would like to remove for separate consideration? Mr. Vineyard.
5 and 13, please.
Number 5 and number 13. Mrs. Vieira.
Number 9.
Okay.
5, 13, 10, and 9. But you need to pull the bonds too, or no?
Okay. Okay, so we have 5, 9, 10, and 13, is that correct?
Mayor Price, may I request to go do number 9 first?
Okay.
Motion to approve
Okay.
the amendment.
Okay, hold on just a second. Are there any items on the consent calendar that anybody in the audience would like to remove for separate consideration? Which one?
Warrant for check number 7388, in the amount of $33,767.51.
Well, that's not under the consent calendar, but we'll take that into consideration.
That's under warrants, is what you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
To your city attorney, Thomas Bergstrup.
Okay, so, yes? Let's go ahead and take the vote. Well, okay, Brian's leaving out of here, so I guess we'll go ahead and take 10 minutes. gentlemen, we are now back in session again. When we broke, we were at the consent calendar. We have items 1, 5, 9, and for clarification, was item number 10 pulled?
No,
there's
been a change.
Strike that. And number 13, are there any other items?
Mayor.
Yes.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
I just want to clarify, because there is a couple of different, I guess there's amendments here. Item 5 is the Bloss House. I know there's people here to talk about. I want to pull it for discussion. And same thing with 13 is water wells. I just want to pull it for discussion on the water problems we're having right now.
Okay. So we're clear on everything that's being pulled at this point? Okay. Very good.
All right, and because the people that are here to help us with our bonds have to get back on the road, we are going to do this a little bit out of order, and so we will be taking item number 9 will be first in being pulled for discussion, but before we do this, we need a vote.
Mr. Vineyard?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Call for the question.
Correction, the consent calendar, let's just make it correct.
We understand.
Raymond?
Yes.
Creighton?
Yes.
Vineyard?
Yes.
Vieira?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay.
Moving to item number 9, authorizing the issuance of wastewater revenue refunding bonds, authorizing and directing execution of an indenture of trust, continuing disclosure agreement, escrow agreements, and a bond purchase contract, authorizing the sale of bonds, approving an official statement, and providing other matters properly relating thereto.
Albert, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor Price, members of the City Council, Honorable City Clerk, Mr. Heiler, thank you very much. We have been on the road almost all day, and we appreciate the opportunity to be before you to talk about refinancing the city's 2008 wastewater revenue refunding bonds. Those bonds were issued in the amount of $20,020,000 10 years ago, of which $10 million went to refinance prior debt, and about $10 million went to fund the initial project work for the wastewater treatment plant. With that, as you may recall, last year we were able to refinance 2 prior wastewater revenue bonds, the 2010 and the 2011 wastewater revenue bonds. However, we could not refinance these bonds due to tax law that would only allow us to refinance those 90 days prior to the May 1st call date. So that is why we are here before you. As you also may recall, Todd Smith spoke at the November 13th meeting. Todd is with the firm of Hilltop Securities. He's the underwriter. Basically what he does is he finds investors for the bonds and markets the bonds. And at closing, he turns over the money that'll pay off the old bonds, and the actual bonds are then provided to Hilltop to give to their investors. I have with me tonight Catherine Thursby from the law firm of Nossaman LLP, and she was here before you last summer. I think it was the redevelopment bonds at the time. Her manager, Albert Reyes, was here when we did the prior 2010 and 2011 refinancing. So as Mr. Heiler said, before you is the indenture, the escrow agreement, the bond purchase agreement, the official statement, continuing disclosure agreement. In a few minutes, I will ask if you have any questions on those. Before that, I'd like to give you some information on what the refinancing will do. So the initial bonds were due to mature. They pay annually, but their last maturity date was May 1st of 2038. So we propose to refinance those bonds with a new set of bonds. We'll call that the 2018 wastewater refunding bonds. And those will also have a maturity date of May 1st, 2038. So we are not extending the maturity. They're going to be paid off within the same time frame as the bonds that they are replacing. Currently, the city has an investment grade rating on the wastewater enterprise of BBB- by Standard & Poor's. We plan on getting bond insurance from Assured Guarantee that will provide a AA rating for the bonds to lower the overall interest cost and provide more savings. As you may recall, these type of bonds require a reserve fund of approximately 10% of the par amount of the bonds. Instead of funding that in cash, which would probably be about $1.5 million. We're going to get a surety bond, which would basically cover that debt service reserve requirement. So if the city were not to make any, have financial difficulties and not make the payment, the surety would then make the payment, and the city will have to make up for that payment in the future. However, the benefit of having the surety, and this is important, is that you can liquidate the prior reserve fund of about $1.5 million and use that to pay down the bonds. So there's actually more cash flow savings. So with the surety, the city can save approximately $225,000 a year annually through 2038. Without the surety, if you have to fund the cash funded reserve requirement, you'd only have about $145,000 a year in savings. So the overall gross savings over the 20-year period is $4.8 million, of which, if you put that in today's dollars, we call it present value, it'd be approximately $3.6 million. And the net present value savings after you subtract out the prior reserve fund is about $2.1 million, and that provides about 12.4% in net present value savings. And that number is derived by the $2.16 million in net present value savings, dividing that by the remaining par amount, and you get 12.4%. So as you may recall in our prior discussions, anything above 3% net present value savings is a good economic refunding. And so although interest rates are continuing, have been going up, and that's why we want to move prudently but quickly, we think that the savings are still going to be pretty substantial. So with that, if you have any questions on any of the legal documents, Ms. Thursby can certainly answer them. If you have any questions on the numbers or how we derive those, I can certainly try to answer those as well.
Okay. Anyone have any questions from the council for Albert or council? You get away easy, Albert.
Ready.
Okay. All right. Mr. Vineyard.
Motion to adopt resolution number 3013-18 for the refinancing.
I second.
Call for the question.
Vieira,
Yes.
Vineyard,
Yes.
Creighton,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. I look forward to coming back sometime in April or May with a little report on how our savings worked out, and hopefully potentially an improvement in the city's bond rating.
Thank you so much. Drive safely.
Thank you.
Our next item will be item number 1, which is warrants, February 12th, 2018.
Did you want to speak to that? Mr. Dewar.
It's Linda's, right?
Okay. Linda, did you have any other questions pertaining to that? Okay.
Linda Dash, Atwater. Firstly, I would like to thank our city manager for responding so rapidly to my email that I sent out this morning or yesterday, whenever it was. I was pretty angry when I looked at your agenda and I noticed again we are paying our city attorney $37,000 a month for his firm's services. Last month it was $30-some thousand. It was $35,704. Past 12 months prior, it was $373,810 to be exact. And I'm telling you that I think that as a voter in the city and taxpayer, you could probably behoove yourselves to go out and recruit a city attorney that can sit in one of those offices 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. He or she may charge you a tad bit more, but I think you'd probably save a heck of a lot more money. In the long run, we wouldn't have garbage contracts that were messed up, solar contracts were messed up, Measure H that says we have paramedics as first responders, which was actually word for word from the series measure that I borrowed a few years ago when I talked to could have been Mr. DeWork, I don't know, but I talked to somebody there. I don't like to see our city manager on his cell phone when we're holding a city council meeting. I see that a lot, and I know you've all had your hands slapped for using your cell phones. I just think we need somebody that's going to take care of our town. This is my money, that's all your money, that pays, you know, these taxes, that keeps our little city, we're trying to keep it afloat. Right now, I think it's a Titanic, and I think we can keep that ship from sinking. But I sure wish that you folks that we elected would put your heads together and figure out how we can do this. I know I spoke to the city of Merced today. They pay $35,000 a month, but that's 3 primo attorneys that they're on contract with right now because they haven't hired a full-time city attorney. But they're a population of over 80,000. And we're not quite 30,000. We're paying just about the same amount. I've checked other cities too, so I kind of know. If you're interested to ask me, I've done a little survey, a little Linda Dash survey. Might not be too important, but it's important to me. So please, please, I want to see this town survive. You're all, you know, very brave to do what you're doing, hang in there with all the mess that we've got right now, but I really wish that you would look at this, and no offense, Mr. Terpstra, personally, but I just think you're too expensive for us. Thank you.
Well, members of the council and staff are also concerned about this, and I also believe Mr. Terpstra is. I think in a moment he may end up making some comments, but very recently the staff and I had discussions about how to curtail the expenditures with the attorney's office. One of the issues that came up was, and I may be putting words into the staff's mouths, but I think that they felt that they weren't empowered to make certain decisions that they were rightfully and properly equipped to do so. So we're seeing much less use in the month of February of the city attorney than in on prior occasions. So I'm not sure that it's going to be a huge reduction, but we're already on a path of a significant reduction. I'll have to see how it goes for the rest of this month, but there are already concrete changes that have been instituted, and it really has a lot to do with staff changing the way it does business. I have total confidence in the individuals sitting there. They know how to make decisions, they know how to conduct research, and they're doing it. So, and before, I'm sure Mr. Terpstra wants to say something, but I want to say something about these. You'll see iPads. This is my instrument to conduct work, so I make notes with it. It's how I do follow-up. It's just more convenient for me to carry this than an iPad. So I'm not here sending text messages to friends and acquaintances. It's a tool of my trade. So,
City Manager?
Yes.
A point of clarification you might share with the citizens about the technical problems we had regarding all of the iPads for city managers today.
Well, that's a good point. Thank you.
My mistake. I didn't mean city manager. I meant city attorney on his cell phone. I must have had city manager in the mind. I've seen the city attorney. No offense, please. My mistake.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, we are having some technical problems with the iPads. In fact, it's one of the things that we may or may not continue using in the future. That's something that I have to ask the council permission for, but I am concerned in the context of budget expenditures in the future that as these units start failing, do we want to invest the kind of money it takes to replace them? That's one of the many questions that we're going to be dealing with in the next several weeks for budget expenditure curtailments. So anyway, enough said about that. And thank you for, I appreciate it. You have a lot of insight, Linda, about the financial aspects of the city. And on a couple of occasions, you've brought some things to my attention. And all I can tell you is keep it up. I'm the new guy here. You have a lot of knowledge, and I accept whatever help you can give. So thank you.
Did you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I do want to thank the city manager for his work on this. This is something that I wrote to the council about back in October before Art came aboard and when Mr. Bramble was here. We don't want an imbalance in our workload. We've been very busy the last year here. I don't know if people noticed that, but there's been a lot going on here. And so we've tried to curtail our expenses. We offered suggestions back in October, almost 6 months ago now, on how to do that. And I thank Art for his leadership on it. We're working on it very diligently. I'd like to bring it back into line with what it was in the previous years.
Okay. All right. Mr. Raymond?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Motion to approve the warrants. Again. Mm-hmm. Call for the question.
Creighton?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Vineyard?
Yes.
Vieira?
Yes.
Price?
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, can I say one more thing about the
Certainly.
cell phone? I meant to address that, and I'm sorry I didn't address that.
Motion did pass, by the way.
Thank you. There are times up here that I do consult my cell phone because I have a number of tabs on there for researching issues that come up. People say things about things on the agenda. I want to make sure that I'm right when I advise the council on the law. And so if I'm looking at my cell phone, it's predominantly for that purpose. Every now and again, I'll get a text from my wife saying, "Are you guys still there?" But other than that, that's what it is. I'm very aware of the cell phone issue. Thank you.
Next item.
We're going to go ahead and move to item number 13 while we wait for,
Yeah, she had to leave.
she had to leave. Okay,
But
then,
we could still do it, and if there's questions that need to be answered, we could take notes of those so that she can bring those back.
yes, we will go ahead and do that. So we'll move to item number 5, which is approving the lease and operating agreements with Atwater Historical Society for the use of Bloss House and grounds.
Mr. McDaniel.
Right, thank you. Us old folks are falling asleep over there. Let me give you just a little, I tried to write stuff down because you know how I am. If I don't write something down, I start rambling, and usually even after I write it down, I start rambling after the first paragraph, so I'll try to stick to it. First, excuse my sniffling. The allergies are going crazy today. And if any time during the conversation you say something and I give you that smile and don't say anything, most of you know how deaf I am all the time, so just yell at me again. I'm trying to figure out what you said, and if I answered it stupid, it was because I didn't hear you in the first place. A little history on the Bloss thing. The city was given the Bloss grounds from Mrs. Bloss upon her death, I believe in '68. I told myself not to give dates because Kathy will correct every single one of them that I give wrong. Along with the Bloss Library and Bloss Hospital. After years of the city using the offices, it was in disrepair and on fast track to either being torn down or sold. The Atwater Historical Society was formed and signed a lease to rebuild and maintain the home in its original glory. They have done that for almost 50 years now. The agreement has worked well for the city until city finances, grounds maintenance from weekly to monthly, and some went from weekly to monthly, and sometimes not even that. The Parks and Rec Department approached the society to possibly take over the groundskeeping because they simply didn't have the budget to do it, and we understood that. We know the city's been having some tough economic times. But since the society did not make any funds from the grounds rentals, and the city did, it was negotiated at the time that we could take over those grounds rentals, which last year I think equaled to about $800 in revenue for the city. Easily cost you more than that probably in labor, just doing the paperwork and the phone calls and stuff like that. And then in return, we would take over the groundskeeping. If you only count the hours that you pay your employees to come out and mow that yard and take care of the stuff, you're talking a couple $1,000s every time they come out. I think the number we came up with, and don't ask me
the formula we used, but it was pretty close. It could be up to $18,000 a year for you guys to take care of those Bloss grounds, based on the original contract of once a week. So for us taking over the income from the wedding rentals and stuff like that in exchange for doing the basic groundskeeping, it seemed like a win-win situation for all of us. It's also important when you're pondering your decision to remember that the Bloss Home grounds are a registered historical site under control of the Atwater Historical Society. The Bloss grounds is totally separate from the designated park across the street, which is the Bloss Park. Even though a lot of the maintenance and planning and upkeep and events and things that go on in Bloss Park are gone through, helped by, and in coordination with the Bloss folks, the Atwater Historical Society and other organizations. So we love Bloss Park across the street. And we also recognize that there is a gigantic potential for combining the use of both grounds. But at this point, we simply need to live within our means, and we need to take care of the Bloss grounds first, and then maybe sometime in the future reopen some of the great dialogue that I've had with a few of you city council members about incorporating both grounds together, making it a fantastic spot for all kinds of events to happen in Atwater. Next was our wanting to put a fence around the property. As you know, the homeless and the vandalism and the drug selling and stuff has grown all over town. But as we pushed them out of the parks, they found that the Bloss home was almost like the Hilton for a homeless. In response, we started calling the police more often, and they have graciously showed up 4 times more than they ever needed to in the past. But that just created more of a problem of now we have 6 shopping cart people sitting there, 2 drug dealers, and 2 police cars. It doesn't go for much, doesn't make much of a selling point for the grounds at all when you have all that happening all the time. And 90% of the people that rent those grounds are people that just drive by, they see it, they say, oh, that looks wonderful, and they call the city to try to make arrangements to rent it. So it's just 2 years ago we'd have never thought about a fence. We didn't want a fence, but we're putting so much money into just keeping things maintained, running people out of there, fixing broken glass and bushes being torn out of the ground. We've had to disconnect electrical outlets because they use it to supply power to all of their electronic equipment. They use the stairway down to the basement as their personal bathroom. It's just crazy. We can't keep them out. I go by there at midnight or after sometimes with my flashlight, and I honk the horn, and I'll send 2 or 3 of them off almost 4 or 5 times a week. Just a quick little sidestep is not too many months ago I made one guy get off the back porch about midnight, and when he set up he looked just like Mayor Price. I mean, the hair, everything looked just like Mayor Price.
I had a bad
I almost
night.
went, okay, go back to sleep, but yeah, it's tough. The fence itself.
Just getting back to nature, Greg. That's
Yeah. Getting back to the fence itself, we're looking at a 6-foot tall wrought iron fence appropriate to the theme that the house holds already, the time period, and something that would not take away from the grounds itself. You're talking to people that have taken care of that place for decades, and every decision they make is based on what's good for these grounds, what's good for the house, and what maintains the quality that the Blosses would have had if they were to still be living there. So someone asked me the other day, why don't you just do a 4-foot fence? Well, 4 foot would keep people like me out of it, but the more agile young guys like the mayor's doppelganger would have probably made it over a 4-foot fence a whole lot easier. The idea is not to keep some people out. It's to keep all of the vandals and the homeless and all that kind of stuff out. I have a lot more notes, but I'd just be rambling on, and if you have specific questions, I'd be glad to answer anything I can.
Mr. Vineyard.
First of all, I want to say that I think the Atwater Historical Society are a tremendous group of people that work their tails off to keep the grounds in that building as pristine as possible. And you talk to them, and they're always coming up with ideas of what needs to be fixed where. To me, this is a terrific idea. My understanding is you're selling sections of fence for donations, correct? And
well, we're testing the waters right now until we get you guys to sign off on it. We're just kind of dangling a piece of paper in front of them and saying, hey, wouldn't you like to have a section of fence? We without having taken any money or anything yet, have probably had, we're selling it at 8-foot sections at $250 a section, and we probably have at least 20 sections sold just by saying, yes, put me down for one. So we just simply don't want to take their money until we get the approval to.
Well, put me down for one.
All right.
Second of all, the concept I think is fantastic. Looking at the lease, I have a little issue with that. We have a 10-year lease with our sanitation garbage. We have a 30-year lease with solar. But we're looking at a 1-year lease to begin with. And I understand there's a 5-year extension possibility, but it may take you more than 1 year to get your feet on the ground. So to me, I don't like that portion. I'd like to see it more be a 3 to 5 year to start with maybe a 3 to 5 extension. That still comes up with about the 6-year overall. Gives you time to get your feet on the ground, get donations, get things in, because it may happen quickly, and then again, it may take you a while to raise the funds necessary. That's the only thing I really didn't like about the lease. Other than that, I think it's a fantastic idea. There's still the 120 days that if you want out of it or we want out of it, we give written notice. So it's there. But I would just like to see the city set up a contract that gives you more time to do the things exterior and make it a better place than just a 1 year.
Yeah, I personally don't see it as an issue. When that became a question by somebody this afternoon, when we were going over some of this, I called a couple of the other board of directors, and they said, I don't see any problem with that. It still comes way out ahead for both sides. We get the income. The property looks better because we can hopefully afford to take care of it more detailed, and the city gets rid of the burden.
I mean, it's a great venue. I just went by the last Sunday, and here's this black big old stretch limousine with a wedding party up on the porch taking pictures. And then I know the police have been doing their patrols. The volunteers have been doing the patrols. You had the presents, I believe, stolen for the Cops for Kids. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. The one room in the house that did not have, well, this is on video, but the one room that did not have an alarm at the time was the back porch, and that's the room they went in and stole all the toys out of the Toys for Tots barrel. Luckily, in a matter of less than a week, we put the word out, and a few really wonderful people replaced those toys and probably quadrupled the amount of toys that had been stolen. So this is a wonderful place to live.
Yeah, and you see people all the time on the porch, like I say, homeless. We have to do something with the homeless in this city, obviously, but I just think we need to protect our historical buildings, especially.
Mrs. Vieira.
Just a couple things on the lease that I noticed when I went over. Nothing bad, just something we may want to make notes of. And I also want to say that I know that we had some emails going back and forth. Thank you for responding quickly and for understanding. I think this kind of got a little clustered up because we just didn't know. So thank you. There's been a lot going on in our city with the restoration of our Veterans Park and our pavilion, and then everybody stepping up and taking such pristine care of the Bloss home. It does show that there's a good spirit here in town, and I think that's what makes us all continue to fight and strive for better. So the only thing that I saw was And again, I'm not the attorney, but just would kind of, I think, in the general public, have a couple questions. Under the fence, it says a minimum of 6 feet tall. So is that a maximum too, or I mean, just kind of notes there. And then on item 22, if fixtures are installed and then later the society wants to take them out, doesn't say anything about would they be replaced, or is it just, so I just kind of wondered, well, maybe there's rules about that that I don't understand.
Sure.
And I think, also the first part says the entire interior of the Bloss home, but then I know it's also referenced later that it's the grounds, so I didn't know, does it need to say the interior and the exterior? Just kind of food for thought, just so everybody's covered. I know your intention is to pretty much take care of every blade of grass and every bush. Again, I want to commend you, and Greg, you've been wonderful to work with. Sandy's reached out, and I know talked with the council, and I tried to respond to everyone so they understood what took so long. I was never presented with this prior to you bringing it to our attention, so thank you.
Typically, us being old, every minute seems like a year. So a few weeks delay for us seemed like forever, but I know in the wheels of democracy and city politics.
You say that, but then you're up at midnight, Greg. So I don't know. I don't know. You're up at midnight looking for bums. So I'm not. But anyway, thank you guys very much for all the hard work and the love and dedication you put into the home. It's a true asset to the city of Atwater. And I know that everybody here, I know that the fence was kind of scary. And I think you and I talked about, you know, my husband and I are both alumni Atwater High graduates, and we have our senior prom pictures taken at the Bloss House. All my children, their wedding pictures are taken on the steps of the Bloss House. My pictures when I ran for city council on the Bloss House. So it is an asset to our city, and so many of our families enjoy having the opportunity for pictures. Or what will be the availability just to go down there and take a picture with our family in the daytime? Will there be hours the gates open, or how's that going to work?
Well, right now we're in the middle of talking all that out. We know that we don't want to close it down to the public because, gosh darn, we made it a historical society to share with the public. At the same time, we have to be realistic and try to make as much money off of the building itself to make sure that building's there another 100 years from now. So without having, okay, this is what we voted on, compromises would be, okay, the Bloss grounds would be open from 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday, and if you want to be in there on the weekend, you simply rent a key. You know, something like that. There's a million possibilities. Whatever we come up with, we'll always have showing off our product to the people of Atwater, and making sure it's as accessible as possible, and at the same time protecting the property, and at the same time making sure we maintain enough income to keep that going for another century. So,
thank you. That's all I have.
Sure. Mr. Raymond.
My question is more for staff, so I don't know if I want to direct it to the city manager, but the concern would be the land use, which Mr. McDaniel just referenced. If we put a fence around it, it would go from public use to non-public use, and at that point, do property taxes kick in because now it's not a public facility, it's now private? And if so, are we on the hook for the property tax, or are we going to work it out with the Historical Society? And that's why I don't know. I just found out, you know, I was just talking to somebody today, Greg.
Sure, the determination of the ground, I think you're assuming that the Bloss grounds is a park, and it is not. It is a historical society. The park across the street that everybody thinks is one giant property is the park part of it. So when we took over the property from the city, it was no different from when the Chamber of Commerce took over the property from the old library building. So.
Okay, so is there going to be a fence around the park also, or just the house grounds?
There's been certain conversations. For example, Paul and I sat down one day and we were throwing around a bunch of ideas about, wouldn't it be nice to have be able to close off Cedar Avenue in front of, between the two parks, the park and the Bloss home, and open that up for a big giant concert venue or bigger weddings or who knows what, whatever our imaginations can come up with. So yeah, we're more than open to incorporating the park across the street into the Bluffs grounds. It's just when you're sitting at home and when you're talking about, okay, we've got 2 cars, do we put the Lamborghini in the garage or do we put the Chevy in the garage? Right now we got to take care of the Lamborghini, and that's the Lost House. Someday if we do a really good job of running the events and stuff and start making lots of money, we'll probably come to you guys with a proposal for the park across the street.
Okay, so with the Bloss House being a historical site, it's not necessarily, the grounds aren't necessarily public use all the time.
It's never been not, I don't know how it's technically listed. I don't know. I'm sure the attorney would know for sure.
Okay, that's why I wanted staff. I didn't want to grill you because I didn't know.
It's no different from when the city had the one of the departments there. I think it was redevelopment, ran those offices for a long time. They didn't allow public to come walking through when they were redevelopment either. So
right.
It didn't make a darn bit of difference then. I don't think it would make any difference now. And again, our entire being is letting people in, not keeping people out. We aren't putting the fence up to keep people out. We're putting a fence up to protect a historical site.
Okay. Mr. Terpstra, do you have an opinion to render on that?
I understand the question. I don't think the tax treatment changes, whether it's owned by a municipality or a nonprofit or operated by either one. I think it probably won't make any difference in terms of property taxes. But the other changes, the other suggestions that Councilmember Vieira made that we talked about earlier, we'll tighten those up as needed, particularly the fixtures issue, which I think is addressed by the Civil Code. But we'll go ahead and tighten that up before we sign. Other than that, I think we're in good shape.
Okay. The only,
go ahead.
I was going to say I agree that I think the terms should be longer. But we have to be specific. Is it going to be 3 with an option, or how did we want to structure that? What would be comfortable for you?
Yeah, we're good with whatever you come up with, really. We know you guys aren't out to take advantage of us or anything, and honestly, every single member up there is a friend of mine, and I trust every one of your judgment, and just keep in mind that we're your grandparents, and we'll have no Christmas from us from the rest of your life. So, but no, we know you guys have a job to do, and things are never as simple as we want them to be. So whatever works out good for both of us will be just great.
Well, I'd like to suggest 3 years with an option of another 3. So, Mr. Vineyard, did you have?
You covered what I was going to cover. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Vieira?
Yeah, I just wanted to make mention that I had spoken with Tom earlier, and the only reason I brought up the fixtures on 22 is just because they're in the lease. So I don't know if this is something that, do you guys routinely bring in different fixtures, or why it was in there at all? So I just didn't know.
Yeah, I was a baby when that was written up, so I don't know.
You were a baby when this was written up? So anyway, I just don't know. I've never worked with a historical society, so I just kind of wondered,
are you talking like light fixtures?
I don't know. It's in the agreement, which I found odd that it was even in there that would mention that you would remove any of it.
The concern might be if the historical society disbands, we might dig our fence up and take it with us. Is that what you're talking about?
Necessary too.
Okay.
So the issue on fixtures are things that are attached to the property that the tenant typically brings in. And in most commercial leases, what you have is a provision that says if fixtures are installed on the property, then at the end of the lease, the lessee, that's you, would be responsible for removing those and restoring the property back to the condition it was before. And then you own the fixtures. Now, if they're left at the end of the lease and you don't remove them, then they're subject to becoming the property of the city. And the city still has the ability to require you to go out and clean up after their removal. So this is a fairly common provision in most commercial leases, but again, the question of whether or not we need to add any additional language to that governs their removal, I think we can take a look at. I think we're probably, my gut tells me we're fine the way we are, but we'll consult the civil code and make sure.
And I wasn't thinking the term of commercial. When I think historical, I'm thinking chandeliers or, and I'm thinking,
yeah,
that's weird that they, anyway.
Correct, yeah, and the only thing that we mark as that would even halfway be designated as not belonging to the Bloss grounds is let's say Mrs. Smith donates a curio cabinet to be shown in the Bloss House Museum. And all we do is put a sticker on it that says this belongs to Mrs. Jones, and boom, we're on the way. Everything else belongs to the property. And I don't think any of us have ever thought any different.
Tom, what you had mentioned about fixtures, would that be not necessarily fixtures that may be attached now, but some that would be brought in the future?
Correct. These
Okay.
monitors up here are fixtures now because they're affixed to and attached to the property.
Okay.
I put a wall unit into my leased office complex just last week, and it's been attached with the heavy screws. That's something that has to be removed at the end of the lease. It is a fixture because it's attached, but it has to be removed at the end of the lease.
Okay.
So yeah, security cameras, things like that. So that's typically, that's what we're trying to govern. I would imagine in the operating agreement, we're going to be working cooperatively with the association here in terms of anything that they want to do in terms of improvements or fixtures. Parties are going to be working closely together, and that's been the relationship, and I'm sure it will continue to be the relationship.
Mr. Creighton.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming and presenting tonight. That the Bloss home is our museum. We don't use that term very often, but it is our museum. The Historical Society has treasures in there that are museum quality, and the house is just, it's like nothing else in the valley. I mean, it's a gorgeous asset that we have. And I think everybody's got a lot of passion. The Historical Society, everybody in the community, I'm a member also. We only want the very best for Atwater in the society, and you guys volunteer hundreds and hundreds of hours a year, and been on the council 13, 14 months, and just found out that we actually own the asset. So that's kind of enlightened us a little bit. And then with the agreement that came forward, I've kind of taken the position of the Historical Society should have always been keeping the money that they've raised, because it's so hard to do functions over there and raise money today. I had no idea that you guys were giving money back to the city, what little bit you guys did have. And I think that was probably misguided on the city's part, that there was never going to be a big revenue source there. And as you guys do improve things and the homeless population damages it or does other things, that's unfortunate for all of us. But we as a community, we need to do more and work with our police department and other members of the community to abate that issue. But I think, like you and I spoke of, and Dr. Williamson and I spoke, that area could be turned into such a greater asset. And if the Historical Society can do more functions, I've been to several functions there, and I really, really enjoy it, and I love it. And I've had my nieces and nephews do their wedding pictures there, and it's part of the family since back in 1957. So it's a great opportunity we have that we're going to be partnering with you guys now. I like where we're going, what we're doing. I don't know if I'm a giant fan of the fence or not, because I love the way the house looks. But if that's what it's going to take to protect it, to keep you guys doing what you're doing there, then sometimes we have to weigh the pros and cons of that. And let's give this a try. You guys asked for a 1-year lease with a 5-year extension, I believe, is in that document. Let's work some of the bugs out in the first year, see how it goes. I think ultimately that the city could probably pick up more of the responsibility later on to do better, that you guys can focus on the historical aspect, the museum quality, and holding functions there and events. And maybe we could start doing a farmer's market on Cedar Street there and eventually close that road. So I just want to tell you guys personally, thank you.
We appreciate it. The folks behind me here, like most of them, have been around since the beginning, and they've worked tirelessly. I came in maybe 10 years ago after moving to Atwater in the 80s, and I had nowhere. I hadn't really called home for more than a year at one time in my life, and Atwater has become my home, and I just love that little jewel sitting right in the middle of the town, and every meeting you go to, they make you cookies and donuts and cakes, and so it's more than worth belonging to the society. We'd like to have all of you guys join the society. If you don't show up for anything but the meetings, great cookies, great cakes. Mo is making some really nice bread nowadays, so stop on by.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for Mr. McDaniel? Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Question?
Yes.
Are we approving it as is, or are we approving it with the suggested changes made by Councilwoman Vieira and for the 3 and 3 agreement with an extension?
My motion was as is.
I had seconded as is because I think that the information that Tom said, we were pretty, even though I had the questions, they were covered in the civil code already, so even though they're there, where I had stated about the interior, it comes down here on number 7 and says the exterior, so I think the way it was written, it's covered. I think he adequately answered my question about the fixtures. I just wasn't thinking the word commercial, because I'm thinking crystal chandelier, so I didn't get it, but I understand the protection of your asset for that, and then also for ours. So even though I had the questions, I think they've been answered, and I'm content with it as is.
Mr. Raymond.
Just for clarifications, Mr. McDaniel, the if and when you guys put the fence up is to protect the asset in its current condition, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Vineyard.
Motion to amend line 2 of the lease to be a 3-year agreement with an extension of possible another 3 years.
For option of an additional 3 years.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Vieira.
Yeah, and I see, Jim, where you're going with that. Item 11, oh wait, I'm sorry, let me go back here. Item 17. And Tom, this is a question for you. It says, either party shall have the right to terminate this lease by personally serving the other party. So even if we went 3 years and a year from now we decided nope, or you decide no, we still have a way to get out. So it's not like you can only terminate if there's 6 birds, or it's still going to be mutual. So it's really almost an open-ended.
That was our understanding.
And the purpose for the 3 years, though, was for the fact that they may not get everything done in the first year. If we give it 1 year and then something happens, to give them that time, not have the pressure that I got to get this done in 1 year. Because if it's not done in 1 year and then they're going to ask for a 5-year extension, why not just give them that time to be able to raise the funds and to get the job done correctly without rushing it? That's why I'm thinking the 3 to 3.
I was just wanting clarification from Tom on line 17, that regardless of the time frame, the Historical Society has the right, just because the wind was blowing too fast, to give their 120-day notice, and then vice versa. It's a pretty cut and dry on either side. We can end it whenever we want. I just wanted that clarification.
And that is clear. Standard.
And that's,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is certainly the case.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Graydon?
So, putting on the Historical Society hat, I'm okay with going to 3 years, but the reason I'm pushing for the 1 year, what you guys initially said, if maintaining the grounds or some tree issues come up, we're going to ball you guys up in a 3-year contract, and then what we're going to do as a Historical Society if we can't meet some obligations. So let's consider, there may be parts of this that we might be able to start doing on our own as a city when we get in a better position. So just consider that. I'm okay whichever way we go with this, but maybe it gives you guys a chance to try on the shoes and then come back and say, let's go forward for the next 5 years with this and this modified so it benefits the society better than burdens the society. That's my only caution.
Yeah, there's pluses and
if I
minuses
could,
either way.
just real quickly, Mr. Mayor, I'm not great at juggling, but I'm going to try. We have a motion and a second. We have a motion to amend that has not been seconded yet. So before we have discussion on that, let's see whether
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Now,
And again, it's, as Ms. Vieira pointed out again, it's, you got that 120 days, or if something comes up down shortly or within that year, we've got that 120 days where we can mutually agree to dissolve it, or one of us can agree to dissolve it and take care of those issues. So I just don't want the Historical Society, to feel pressured like they have to rush doing everything to make this place more beautiful than it is. Thank you.
Okay. So where are we, I'm a little confused here.
We need to take action on the amended item.
The last motion first. Okay.
Which is Mr. Vineyard's, which is changing item number 2.
Yes.
The term of this lease shall be for a period of 3 years commencing on March 1st, 2018, and extending 3 years from that point.
An option for
an option for 3 years.
Yes.
Correct.
May be extended for an additional 3-year period.
Correct.
That's the motion before you.
Well, what is your preference? You want 1 year, 3 years? What is your preference? You're the one that's going to be caring for it, and I understand Paul's point is he wants to protect you. What, a year from now you guys say, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming and we're not making money and it's costing money, there's not enough. So what is your preference? I mean, you're the ones taking on the liability. What are you wanting to do?
Tell you the truth, I don't know. We were just happy to get the agreement in the first place. 3 years sounds logical, because that first year is going to be tough. We're not even going to have a fence for the first 6 months of this year, to be able to start on the rest of the improvements, which means income on the property may or may not start increasing immediately. It's kind of naive to think the second you guys hand it over to us, it's going to start making triple the money. It's going to take time and effort and all that kind of stuff. So me personally, without taking it to the entire board, I trust you guys enough to protect us and just put thought into which is the best for us, because remember, we're old, and if we hurt you, we don't mind going to jail for a couple of years.
Okay.
So I honestly don't, personally, I don't think it makes a whole lot of
Then let's
difference.
do this so that we can come to an agreement. Let's compromise as a council. We've got a 1 year and a 3 year. I'll make it a motion that we say 2 year. They have an option to get out. We have an option to get out. We don't have to argue. 1 year, 3 year, 4 year extension. We're in the middle. We're compromising, and then maybe we can 2 year and a 4 year. I mean, it's a compromise between 1 and 3. So.
We've got a motion.
My only worry, and it might not even be a worry, is say we go with 2 years and all of a sudden 2 years is up and the Historical Society is making money hands over fist because we're great at promoting the property. In 2 years, do we, City Council comes up and says, what, that's looking pretty good out there. Can we have it back?
So you would like 3 years?
Yeah.
You would like 3 years?
Okay.
Are we going to have a discussion on that?
We need.
We need a second on her motion.
Well,
I'll retract my motion.
Okay.
So now you have 3 and 3. You have the 3 and 3.
Okay, I want to have a little discussion on what was just said then. Mayor? Okay. So, as I'm listening and fighting for the Historical Society again, that whether you do a 1, a 2, or a 3 and 3, that just so you could come back at any time. The Historical Society can come back and say, you know what, we like this piece, and we want to go for a 5-year on just keeping the revenue for the events, which I like to see into perpetuity, that the Historical Society does something, they just keep it. So no matter what we decide on tonight, you guys can always come back before that time period's up and amend it, bring it to the table for an amendment. So think of that, you guys, don't stick yourselves into something that you don't want.
Sure.
okay.
The motion before you is approving the lease and operating agreements with Atwater Historical Society for the use of Bloss House and grounds and amending item number 2, the term of this lease shall be for a period of 3 years, commencing, so on and so forth. The lease may be extended for an additional 3-year period. That is the motion before you.
Discussion? Call for the question.
Creighton.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Vieira.
Yes.
Vineyard.
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
Our next item is an informational item only, and that is item number 13, water well levels for the month of January 2018 and water well levels for the calendar year 2017.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Vineyard?
Yeah, the reason I brought this up is just noticing the water levels, and Councilman Creighton and I have talked a little bit about this in the meantime. My main purpose is people need to see that they've dropped, maybe not drastically, but we haven't had the rainfall, which is obvious, maybe 30% of what we normally have had. The governor declared that the drought was over, but the water board never removed the restrictions, not until November 25th, according to the notes I have, and I don't know if they've taken another vote to keep it extended. But that being said, they can always come back and put those restrictions back on this city. So I just want to remind the people we're still at 2 days of watering a week. Still no, of using the hose without the nozzles. You got to use all those things. Not washing off sidewalks, not washing off driveways. You still have to fall under the ordinance as is that we still have implemented. Mr. Olzak, who's left already, is one of the volunteers that does the water abatement, but you can contact the volunteers or the police department if you notice that somebody is not observing the rules. And we need to start doing it now. When I'm out driving around, I've seen people who have gotten lackadaisical because it's winter time. But I think we still need to be conscious of what's going on with the weather. Check your sprinklers, absolutely. I mean, this is the perfect time for it, to make sure they're working correctly so they aren't leaking and everything else. But we still need to be conservative. Our groundwater still hasn't come up. It's going to be another 3 to 4 years of good rains before we really get a good ground level recharge. So just keep that in mind. Do your due diligence wherever you can. And that's kind of why I wanted to bring this up and mainly talk about the restrictions that we're on still, and that we just need to be cognizant of. If you have a question, give my cell phone a call, and I'll look up the information for you.
Yeah, and if I might just also add to that, something that people may not realize, we're going to have the unimpeded flow that the State Water Board and their infinite wisdom have authorized so that we can save 1,100 salmon. And that is going to be implemented here shortly. Our water levels up in the reservoirs and what have you are at an okay level right now. They're not maxed out like they were before. So once that unimpeded flow begins, you're going to see probably a very dramatic drop in the levels of McClure, Don Pedro, and others. So I agree with what Mr. Vineyard is talking about. We have to kind of, look at this a little bit more down the road, be a little more forward thinking, because, it's pretty obvious we haven't had a whole lot of rain this year, and the foreseeable future doesn't show much improvement in that. So it's going to be something that I think is going to, rear its ugly head once again. So I wholeheartedly agree. Our restrictions and all that are still in place, although people, when we're told that, the drought's over, and the next thing you know, you see water rolling down the street over the curbs and everything else, days, for watering and all that, are something that people just completely forgot. So try to be cognizant of that, because it's going to get worse, I think, before any better, unless March and April are going to really be a deluge, and even then it's going to have to be a lot. So be thinking about that. So Anything else out of that, Mr. Vineyard? Okay.
No, thank you.
And the next item is?
Public hearings. Waiving first reading and introducing ordinance number CS 993, amending Chapter 2.0 of the Atwater Municipal Code entitled City Parks, Title 12, Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places, Section 12.08.010, Prohibited Hours.
Mr. Shaw, you're up now.
Yes, what this is for is, we had park hours, but it didn't have all the parks listed in that ordinance. So what we've done now is we've just put on all existing or new parks, anything that comes in. The hours would be from 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning. Nobody is to be in those parks. So we're trying to cut down on the graffiti and just getting stuff torn up in all the parks.
Okay. The only question I have is how do, it's been something I know that has been difficult insofar as the enforcement of these hours. Is there any suggestion on?
Well, when it passes, we're going to be putting up signs at the parks. And then the police department will have authority to go in there. It's a misdemeanor to be in there during those hours, between 10 and 6. So they can start giving warnings to begin with for the first couple of weeks or whatever. Then they can start citing them on a misdemeanor.
Yeah. I don't want to task the police department. It's, they've got enough to do as it is, but Veterans Park does have gates across that. Is there any way possible, and I don't mean, right on the hour, but is there a possibility that the PD can take care of that?
If they can close it at night, we can open it back up in the morning.
That's okay. That's
yes.
fine.
And years ago, that used to be the way it was. We did close that park at night.
Okay. Well, if that could be done, and keep in compliance with that, especially in light of the fact that Veterans Park has just had thousands and thousands of dollars of rework done on the pavilion.
And that's the main reason for this.
Okay. Okay.
Because we've got a lot of people camping out there.
Yeah, understand.
Sleeping there all night.
Understand.
Just making a mess.
Okay. Mr. Vineyard?
And just for the record, I mean, it's going to be with some discretion of the officers due to the fact that you do have softball games and stuff at Osborne going on. And I just want to make sure that people are aware of that. It's not right at 10 o'clock, boom, they're closed.
If you
Because
look
there may
in
be
the-
a game or something
In the
going
whole
on.
ordinance, if they have a permit to be there,
Okay.
yeah, they can be there till midnight,
Okay.
like at Osborne when they have softball, and it goes on till midnight or whatever, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Creighton?
Just to clarify too, on the Veterans Park, they have rec programs there that go, I don't know what the cutoff is, Sandy's not here, but on the way out, they could probably lock that final gate up, and Public Works could open up in the morning, and PD can help and do other things. But the main thing we need to train everybody in the community is that there shouldn't be anybody there if there's not an event going on. And if you see something, that gives the PD opportunity to chase off the vagrants and the vandals that are causing trouble with the Bloss House and the Veterans Pavilion, which the vets just put $50,000 into renovating that, and it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, and we have problems out there right now. They're trying to pry the doors open to get in to steal the brand new equipment we have, so this can't come soon enough, and we can't lock that gate soon enough at night.
Yeah, but to get in on that, if the rec people close that gate, the problem is we really need PD to go in there to make a loop around to make sure they've run everybody out. We don't want the young people that are doing the rec to go and try to run the homeless or whatever out of the park.
Yeah, that's true. In some communities, like in the coastal area, they just lock you in. And so if you're in there, you're in there, and if PD has time to patrol and they see somebody in there, then they're gonna get in trouble. But I think instead of wasting too much time driving around circles, the city manager can work that all out with.
Okay, a phone call to dispatch saying, we're done out here, we're going to be going.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah, they just make a one-time drive-through.
Yeah, phone call takes care of that. So,
that's good news.
yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Vineyard?
Motion to waive the first reading and introduce
Well,
ordinance.
let's hold on. This is a public hearing. And
I'm sorry. I'll retract it.
Okay, so this is a public hearing. We'll open it now to the public. If you have any comments to make towards this particular agenda item, please step forward to the podium, state your name for the record. Seeing nobody coming forward, bring it back to the council. You're on, Mr. Vineyard.
Motion to waive the first reading, introduce ordinance CS 99-3, amending Chapter 2 of the Atwater Municipal Code.
Second. Any other further comments or questions? Call for the question.
Raymond.
Yes.
Creighton.
Yes.
Vineyard.
Yes.
Vieira.
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item, declaring the city's intent to convey city-owned real property located at 3116 Virginia Street.
Ms. Waterman.
Mayor, City Council, staff's recommending adoption of Resolution 301118, conveying property owned at 3116 Virginia Street. Last council meeting, staff brought this item to the council and asked that accordance with government code that the city council declare notice for the public hearing to receive any protests regarding the conveyance of the property. We've published the resolution of intention as well as posted, and we're asking for adoption tonight to transfer the property to the adjoining property that has been maintaining the property. This is an abandoned well site that's no longer any use to the city or anyone else. It abuts the property located on Virginia.
Ms. Vieira.
Motion to approve the recommendation as presented.
This is a public hearing. I need to open the public hearing there. And,
It doesn't say on here.
oh, yeah, it's right under top of there. Okay. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, come forward and state your name for the record. Seeing none, bring it back to the council. Ms. Vieira, you're up.
Motion to approve the recommendation as presented.
Thank you so much.
Second.
Okay. Call for the question.
Raymond.
Yes.
Creighton.
Yes.
Vineyard.
Yes.
Vieira.
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Motion passes. Interim city manager reports and updates. The verbal update regarding a consultant for police management audit.
Well, my comments are short because there's not much going on. We had two prospects for conducting the management audit, and both have declined. So I have one more prospect that I've been following up on as of today. I may have an answer tomorrow, but I'm a little bit anxious to get this thing going for reasons that I can't articulate in a public setting. This is critical to, continuing with adequate operations within the police department. So I'm hoping that I'll get a solid answer, and that, from the remaining prospect, if hopefully we can get something started within the next week or two. But nobody has shown a lot of enthusiasm for taking on this project. That's it for that subject.
Our next item is verbal update regarding proposed reorganization of the Community Development and Resource Commission.
So at the last council meeting, I mentioned that staff had already started checking out the pros and the cons of the CDRC basically splitting apart so that it was so that it's no longer one combined unit. We are now basically asking the council to hold off for a while. There are quite a few high priority projects that staff's working on, and we feel that this is not the time to pursue this subject any further. Maybe pick it up at a later time, but at least 6 weeks is what we're hoping to get basically a stay of execution. So, pardon me? I'm sorry, did I hear you say weeks? 6 weeks at minimum. I really don't want to commit to a specific date because of the nature of the work that staff is undertaking now, particularly along the lines of dealing with creating a budget plan and really addressing the major issues surrounding the budget for the next 4 years. So those are our highest priorities, and they are consuming a good deal of staff's time. So.
Reports and presentations from staff, verbal update regarding business licenses.
Mark?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mark Prada, Chief Billing Official. This is just some information for you that we recently discovered that 8 business licenses applications were not fully processed on a timely basis, unfortunately, owing to the communication breakdown between the City Finance Department and the Fire Department. Finance notified me that there were awaiting sign-offs from the Fire Department. Knowing the importance of having a response action to help the business community thrive and feel welcome, I took the necessary steps to correct the issue by working with the Fire Department, with Justin right here. This will help ensure the issues that do not repeat itself. So we just had a little cog in the machine there for a little bit. We ironed it out between Justin and myself and took care of the issues at that time.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Mr. Peretta? Okay.
City Council matters. City Council comments.
Mr. Brian Raymond.
I have nothing.
Ms. Vieira?
I always have something. I just want to encourage the public, if you have questions in regards to anything that has to do with City Council, we're all pretty available. Please reach out. Our cell phones are on the website. You can leave messages here. We're usually pretty available to answer your questions. I think that's pretty much it. I know that City Manager's pretty open if you have direct communication with him. That seems a couple people have come in, spoken with him. I know Mrs. Dash has taken advantage of that. So a lot of times and a lot of things that are said tonight, I think sometimes our visions are just skewed because we hear from this person or that person, but check your resources, make sure the information that you're relying on is accurate. I know that our POA president did speak and did make mention that their press release was given to both newspapers on the 22nd or 23rd, and I'm not sure as of today if that's been published or not. But, you know, there's always two sides to the story. So everybody knows that since the beginning I was and am still an advocate and a believer that Mr. DeWard is doing a good job. He's here for 6 months, and I think before we start throwing in our towels, we give him a little bit of time, just like we are the Historical Society. They want a year to get up and going. What about Mr. DeWart? We gave him 6 months. So if we're going to bring him here and ask him, then let's have a little bit of faith in him and see what we can do with that. At the end of 6 months, if he fails, then I have failed as well. So a lot of weight on your shoulders.
Mr. Creighton.
I just want to thank everybody that came tonight and had something to say. And with the agreement with the Historical Society and the Bloss Museum, hopefully we can take that gym and launch from there around the downtown area the revitalization that's sorely needed down there and clean it up and start having some functions down there. Maybe some events will be coming shortly. So I'm really excited about that and appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Vineyard.
I'll echo that sentiment about everybody coming tonight. It was good to see a packed house for a change. There's two things, actually. I'm going to start with the first one, Winco. As it's been in the news, Merced had an opportunity for a Winco, and because the public showed some displeasure with that, Winco pulled out. Well, we have some buildings. I'd like to see us to pursue Winco. I know we have a lot of things going on, but I think, you know, it's a shot. We've got some major buildings. I know it's a great opportunity that we could provide, but we have to be positive. As the mayor was saying, Merced, we got to be positive. So, but we all need to be positive in trying to bring that business in because, you know, we need it. The second thing is, and I can't comment whether other council members and the mayor have had lots of calls, but I have. Maybe it's because the volunteers deal with a lot of this, is yard sales. It's just getting deplorable out there. I've seen one on Winton Way and Elm where they actually bring the furniture in pickups and they sit there, and the barbecue's still sitting out in the corner now, and they've had it every weekend now. I don't know if there's overtime. I know we have to watch our dollars, but if we can do something with code enforcement, it's one person. He has addressed them, but they're back. But it's all over the city. And back in 2012, we used to have permits before that, and they cost like, I think it was $25 or something for the year. And then we went away from that. But the volunteers were out doing it then too, and if they found somebody without a permit, they issued the permit, collected the money, and brought it back in. I think we need to look at something like that again, is having a yearly permit. The paperwork gets out to the people, the rules, regulations, but we got to get some teeth in the ordinance for those who don't want to abide by those rules. I'm not trying to tax people. I'm not trying to take money out of your pocket, but make it a reasonable permit so that everybody gets all the same information. There's probably, I want to say 4,000 signs that the volunteers tore down off last year, citywide, if not more, that were left up from yard sales. That's got to be the yard sale people's responsibility to take those down and not put them up on poles. But I think we need to reestablish something. I know I got our plate full, but I think we need to look at that ordinance and reestablish the permit process. Again, the volunteers can do it. They've done it before, so it wouldn't be a burden on the police officers, other than if a police officer sees something during the weekend when code enforcement is there, and they have the time to do it, to please quickly address those yard ordinances. Thank you.
Well, first of all, staff and I will discuss Winco tomorrow morning. This is actually this is in the same line of what Mark was talking about, and that is a great emphasis on attracting and maintaining businesses in the community. So that'll be an immediate order of business tomorrow morning. So it'll be Lori and I and maybe Mark. And then on the garage sales issue, the communities I've worked in, they all suffer and face the same issues. But since you have responsibility for the volunteer program, and we have our interim police chief here, I'm sure we can make a dent in that problem. I haven't looked at the ordinance, but I think we can do that without the assistance of an attorney. They're pretty basic. In fact, I think we can steal ordinance language from communities that are, have a good ordinance in place. So I don't think you're talking about a big deal here. So
it shouldn't be.
We'll follow up, and I'm going to leave the lead for that with Chief Echeverria. So
thank you.
I guess it's on me. I wanted to thank Jack Mobley. He invited Mr. Raymond and I to go. What church was that again, Brian? Do you remember?
Faith Bible.
Faith Bible. Yeah, they had a food judging contest over there, and Mr. Raymond and I got the distinct honor and privilege of being the judges. Although I didn't anticipate having, 13, 14 items sitting out there, and said, here you go, boys, dig in, So by the end of the line, with desserts and everything else, it was absolutely a full meal, without a doubt. But it was really a neat event, and good people over there, and it was something that I enjoyed immensely. I wanted to also talk a little bit about the ACE train. That's something that people have been talking about here lately. We had a couple of meetings over the last couple of weeks, and those that don't know what the ACE train is, it's a commuter train that is currently running from Stockton into the Bay Area, and the extension will run from Stockton all the way to Merced. We are in competition with our neighbors to the north in Livingston, who are under the delusion that they are the better place to have a station up there. Well, we have also a area that we think would be more in line with what we need to do. It's right out there across from KFC on Atwater Boulevard, a little transpo center right there. There's some modification to it and what have you. We can make that a more desirable place. And I know that Lori is taking the lead on doing the paperwork, letters, and all this sort of stuff to go to the ACE Board of Directors and get that consideration for Atwater. So it's something that we're working on. There's $400 million out of SB1 that has been dedicated to bringing that to our area. So hopefully we can do that. There was a lot of discussion and roundtable discussion, and also good suggestions on just what makes us the better site. So hopefully we'll see that moving forward. Wanted to ask Mr. Shaw if you have any insight. I asked at the last meeting if we could look into possibly seeing about doing some center lines and lane dividing lines on Winton Way from Olive down towards Juniper and other areas, but that area in particular. Do you have any input on that?
I have it on the schedule.
Okay.
Hopefully we're going to start maybe this week, but probably next week we're going to start.
Okay.
We went out, we have the yellow reflective buttons that we're going to be putting down. Excuse me. Which is better than, we've had that thing painted twice and it's just, it doesn't last.
Right.
So if we put all the new, we're just going to put all the new reflective buttons down.
Right.
So that you'll be able to see that a lot better. And then
Okay.
we have some white ones too, where we could put it in the center, the dividing between the two lanes.
Okay.
But that is
Okay.
in the works.
Yeah, I'm looking to see where we can take some money out of the Measure V funding and, to support some of that sort of thing. I think that's real important, and again, it's becoming a real safety issue within the city. There's a lot of streets that need a lot of work. We know that. That's no secret. But if we can do some, simple things, some of that low-hanging fruit, as they say, for something as simple as putting down a line that, can keep people kind of a reference, old guys like me with one good eye. So, anyway. Lastly for me, I want to thank all the folks that contacted me, texted me, you name it. For those that didn't know, my elder brother passed away, and I had spoken about him coming through Atwater here a couple months ago. He drove through all the way from Georgia and came and visited my family in Los Angeles area, and then up here, and then on his way over to Reno, you might remember, he pulled up to a friend of ours' house, and no sooner got there and his wife stepped out the car and fractured her femur. So it was not a pleasant trip for him on a lot of different levels, and but in any case, he got back home, and he had kept it from us, but the cancer that he had actually spread and was pretty devastating. And sadly, we lost Dave here just a week ago, and he was my big bro, and I'm going to miss him to death. I can tell you that. Thank you for everyone and your good wishes. Mr. Vineyard, I'll turn it over to you to adjourn our meeting in behalf of William Garrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't know Mr. Garrison, but Mr. Lee did. He served in the Navy during the Korean War, which is close to my heart because my dad served in the Army at the Korean War. So it was an ugly war. He was a barber here in Atwater for 40 years, and after he retired, he became a volunteer for the police department. In 2001, Mr. Garrison, along with Police Chief Jerry Moore, basically got permission to organize what is now known as the Atwater Police Chaplains Association. It was done on November 13, 2001. So he was the instigator behind all that. And the chaplains do more, just so people know a little bit about it. The chaplains do more than just come here and do the opening prayer. They do more than be there for the officers if they need them. They're there for the public as well. And when they first started this, there would be people that would need a home place to stay for the night or two, would need food, would need gas. The chaplains would take money out of their own pocket and pay for those things until they got a budget. But that budget doesn't go very far, so the chaplains still do that. So they provide a huge service, and they do more than that. If you ever want to know what the chaplaincy really does, if you're interested in it, talk to Mr. Lee. He'll give you a brochure, and it's just incredible the number of things that you don't even think about that they do. and the services they provide to the public, the police department, and everything else. So in his memory, he passed away just this last January here, 2018, and the memorial was the February 1st. So on his behalf, I want to give my condolences to the family and wish them well, and to close it in the memory of William Bill Garrison. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for showing tonight. Thank you at home for watching. God bless you all. Drive safely. This meeting is adjourned.